Two people make the exact same promise to themselves this year. Same goal, same starting line. 6 months from now, only one of them will still be standing here. One gives up in 3 weeks, blaming a lack of motivation. The other transforms completely. And the strange part? It had almost nothing to do with willpower. In the early 2000s, one national cycling team was so bad, top manufacturers refused to even sell them equipment. Then, a new coach arrived with an unusual idea. Instead of chasing one big breakthrough, he improved 100 tiny things by just 1%. Bike seats, hand washing, even the pillows riders slept on. Within a few years, that same team became nearly unbeatable, winning championships experts had called impossible for them just a decade earlier. Here's the math behind it. Improve just 1% daily, and in a year, you're roughly 37 times better. Decline 1% daily, and you're left with almost nothing. This is the hidden mechanism behind nearly every transformation and every failure. And it all begins with something psychologists call the habit loop. A habit is simply a behavior repeated so often, the brain stops thinking about it, running quietly in the background of everyday life. Every habit begins with a cue, a time, a place, or a feeling. A small trigger telling your brain that a reward might be close. That cue sparks craving, not the action itself, but the desire for how it will make you feel. Craving is the engine that gets you moving. Craving leads to response, the actual behavior, and whether it happens often depends on one simple thing: how easy or hard that behavior is. Finally, the response earns a reward, satisfying the craving and teaching your brain this loop is worth repeating tomorrow and the day after. This loop isn't a weakness, it's efficiency. Automatic habits free up mental energy the brain would otherwise burn deciding the same thing over and over. Watch it happen in 2 seconds. A notification lights up your screen. Cue, craving, response, reward. Repeated dozens of times before lunch without a single conscious decision. Most people obsess over goals, the result they want. But goals don't explain who actually succeeds long term. Systems do. Two people both want to read more this year. One relies on motivation alone. The other builds a 5-minute nightly system. Only one still reads a year later. The deepest habits don't come from wanting an outcome. They come from believing, quietly, I am the kind of person who does this. Think of every small action as a vote for the person you're becoming. Enough votes, and that identity stops being a hope, it becomes evidence. Someone quitting smoking doesn't just resist a cigarette in a moment of willpower. They say, I'm not a smoker, and the craving loses its footing entirely. So how do you actually build this? The first lever is making the cue impossible to miss. Visibility alone can quietly steer behavior. Running shoes left by the door, a water bottle sitting on the desk. Small, obvious cues that nudge action long before willpower is ever needed. To break a habit, instead, do the opposite. Make the cue disappear entirely. Leaving a phone in another room removes the trigger before it starts. The second lever is craving. Habits stick faster when your brain genuinely looks forward to them, not just tolerates them out of obligation. One technique, called temptation bundling, pairs a habit you need with one you want, only allowing a favorite show while exercising, for instance. To weaken a bad habit, make it unattractive. Reframe it honestly, focusing on its true long-term cost instead of its short-lived appeal. The third lever is friction. The easier a behavior is, the more often it happens, regardless of how motivated you feel that day. The 2-minute rule shrinks any habit down to almost nothing. Not read a chapter, just read 1 page. Starting is the only real hurdle. To break a bad habit, add friction instead. Unplug the television. Delete the app. Make the unwanted behavior just inconvenient enough to pause and reconsider. The fourth lever is satisfaction. Your brain repeats what feels immediately good, even when the real benefit is still months or years away. Habit tracking works because it creates an instant reward, a checked box, an unbroken streak your brain suddenly doesn't want to lose. To break a habit, attach an immediate cost, something that makes the behavior feel bad right away, instead of only regretting it later. One powerful trick combines all four levers: habit stacking. Attach a brand new behavior directly onto one that's already automatic in your day. Willpower is unreliable, but environment is constant. Redesign the space around you, and you remove the need to resist temptation in the first place. A single redesigned morning, shoes by the door, water on the nightstand, no phone in sight, becomes almost automatic within just a few weeks. But here's the catch: most habits show no visible results at first. Progress accumulates silently, like ice sitting in a room that isn't warm enough yet to melt. Expectations rise faster than results, creating a gap researchers call the valley of disappointment, exactly where most people quit, right before the breakthrough. Then, seemingly overnight, the invisible work becomes visible. Not luck, just compounding, finally crossing the threshold where change becomes obvious. Habits rarely form in isolation. Humans naturally copy the behavior of the people closest, the largest in number, and the most respected around them. Join a group that already lives the identity you want, and the new habit stops feeling difficult. It simply starts to feel normal. Deep inside the brain, a region called the basal ganglia stores these loops, letting repeated behavior run smoothly without conscious thought getting in the way. This is exactly why small, designed systems outlast big bursts of willpower. Willpower fades fast. Automated behavior doesn't need to be chosen again. To recap, make it obvious or invisible. Make it attractive or unattractive. Make it easy or difficult. Make it satisfying or unsatisfying. 4 levers, 2 directions each. Underneath every single lever sits the same real question. Not what result do I want, but who am I becoming, one small repetition at a time. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement, small enough to ignore on any single day, powerful enough to define an entire life. The system doesn't need to be impressive to begin. It just needs to be small enough that skipping it feels genuinely unnecessary. The version of you that exists 10 years from now is being built right now, inside choices almost too small to notice. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You rise or fall to the level of your systems. The next small choice is already a vote for who comes next. And there's a lot more of this story still worth exploring. Subscribe to keep going.